Brooklyn after landing a job at a used bookstore in Williamsburg. Rent was steep, but I got lucky with a small studio above an old Polish deli. The place had character, creaky stairs, vintage wallpaper, and a tiny balcony with cracked tiles. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The apartment faced a narrow alleyway, separating my building from another row of apartments. Right across from me, directly aligned with my window, was a broken window in a bricked-up unit on the third floor. The window was smudged with grime, the glass chipped, and the room behind it completely dark. My landlord told me that whole side of the building had been condemned for years. No plumbing, no electricity, and no tenants. At first, I barely noticed the window. I'd come home from the bookstore around 9 p.m., toss off my shoes, heat some ramen, and scroll endlessly until I passed out. But after a few weeks, I started getting this strange feeling that someone was watching me. I'd glance up while brushing my teeth or folding clothes and find my gaze locked on that dark window. It was silly, I told myself. Just an empty building across the way. One night, I had just turned on my reading lamp when I caught something move in that window. A flicker, like someone had walked past. I froze, waiting for more. But the window remained still, lifeless. Later, I saw it again, this time clearer. A slow movement, like a hand pulling a curtain aside. Except there were no curtains. I watched for nearly 20 minutes, waiting to see if anything else moved. Nothing. It became routine. I'd come home, turn on my lights, and moments later, the shadow would shift in the broken window across the alley. Always the same, a slow movement and then stillness. I mentioned it to my friend Jess, but she laughed it off, saying maybe it was a squatter or my imagination playing tricks on me. But one night, something changed. I came home late after grabbing dinner with coworkers and noticed an envelope on my doormat. No stamp, no address, just my name in jagged black ink. Inside was a single note. "You're interesting." No signature. Nothing else. My stomach twisted. My building had a buzzer. No one could get in unless someone let them. Heart pounding, I looked across the alley. The window was pitch black. And yet, I was certain someone was there. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined footsteps in the hallway or someone standing silently at the other side of my window. I left all the lights on and pushed a chair against the door, like that would stop anyone if they really wanted in. The next morning, I marched downstairs to confront Mr. Kowalski, the deli owner and my unofficial landlord. He lived in the back of the store and knew everyone in the building. I asked him, "Do people ever go into the place across the alley? The window facing mine?" He gave me a puzzled look. "That part of the building? Been sealed for years. City shut it down after a fire, mold, rotting beams. No one's been in there since 2014. I pushed further. "Are you sure? Could someone have broken in?" He shrugged. "Unlikely. Place is locked tight, and the stairs collapsed. Not safe." I wanted to believe him. I really did. That night, I turned off all my lights and sat on my bed in the dark. I waited. At exactly 10:47 p.m., the same. Couldn't make out a face, just a silhouette against the broken glass. I backed away, too scared to breathe. I didn't want to call the police without proof. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture. The screen showed nothing, just the reflection of my own window in the dark. But then came the knock. Not on my door, on my window. A soft, rhythmic tapping. I turned slowly. No one was there, but the balcony door was open. I had locked it. I was sure. I slammed it shut and ran to the hallway. I didn't stop to grab my things. I didn't even put on shoes. I ran downstairs barefoot, burst into the deli, and begged Mr. Kowalski to come with me. He called the police and agreed to check the place across the alley when they arrived. When the officers finally forced their way in, the building was just as condemned as Kowalski had said. Mold, collapsed ceilings, dead rats. But in the room across from mine, the one with the broken window, they found something that stopped all of us cold. A rusted chair, placed dead center in front of the window. A folded blanket. A small pile of food wrappers. And dozens of crumpled notes. All said the same thing, over and over. "I like watching her. She's always alone. I wonder if she sees me." There was no sign of the person. No fingerprints, no ID. Just the chilling evidence that someone had been there, watching me for weeks. I moved out 2 days later. Jess let me crash on her couch until I found a new place. I never went back. But sometimes, when I walk past old brick buildings, I catch myself glancing up. And every time I see a dark window, I wonder, who's watching now? When I was 13, my parents moved us from a small town in Iowa to a rundown farmhouse in rural Kansas. Dad wanted a quieter life, and Mom was happy to be away from traffic and noise. Our nearest neighbors were nearly 2 miles away, and we were surrounded by nothing but wheat, corn, and silence. The house itself was old, creaky stairs, faded wallpaper, and a draft that made the floorboards moan at night. Behind the house stood a leaning red barn and, beside it, a hatch that led to a root cellar. It was always locked. Dad said it was unstable and warned me not to go near it. Our dog, Roscoe, didn't listen. He was a scrappy mutt with too much curiosity. He would often sniff around the cellar door, barking at nothing. The first few times, we laughed it off. But then he started growling low, tail stiff, ears alert. Every time he went near the cellar. One night, I was reading comics in bed when I heard Roscoe barking like crazy outside. I peeked through the window. He was by the barn, facing the cellar, fur bristled, barking nonstop. I told Dad. He grabbed a flashlight and went out, calling Roscoe. A few minutes later, he came back in, said he didn't see anything. Just some old raccoons maybe. But Roscoe didn't calm down for hours. The next morning, I found claw marks on the cellar door. Not animal claw marks, scratches, thin and deep, like fingernails. I showed Mom. She frowned and told Dad, who brushed it off again. Probably metal from a shovel scraping against it, he muttered. That week, I kept waking up around 3 a.m. Like clockwork. Every night, I'd hear soft creaking under the floorboards. One night, I put my ear to the wooden floor. I heard words, but it was there. Faint, slow, not frantic, like someone was speaking softly to themselves beneath the house. I didn't tell my parents. Not yet, but I started keeping a flashlight under my pillow. Then, Roscoe vanished. We searched everywhere. The fields, the barn, even down by the creek half a mile out. No trace. No fur, no tracks, no barking. I called and called, but he never came back. That night, I had a dream that I stood at the cellar, and someone inside was scratching from below, whispering my name. The morning after that dream, I found something on our porch. Roscoe's collar. It was soaked, stained with something dark, and the metal tag was bent, like someone had stepped on it. I handed it to Dad with trembling hands. He went pale. For the first time, he didn't have an excuse. He mumbled something about coyotes, but I could see it in his face. He didn't believe it either. That evening, I sat in the barn watching the cellar door. I waited. Around midnight, I saw it move. Not open, just move. The latch rattled, ever so slightly. My body froze, heart thudding like a drum in my ears. The door stayed shut, but the silence that followed felt like something was holding its breath beneath it. I ran to the house and locked my bedroom door. The next day, I convinced my best friend Caleb, who lived back in our old town, to visit for the weekend. I needed someone else to see what I was seeing. We spent the day riding bikes and pretending everything was fine. But that night, I woke up to him shaking me. Dude, I heard something under the floor. He led me to the window. We both watched as the cellar door slowly creaked open. A hand reached up, grayish, long-fingered, and placed something at the edge. Then it vanished back into the darkness. We waited until sunrise before going out. At the top of the cellar stairs sat a small pile. Bones. Tiny ones. Chicken bones, maybe. Or maybe not. Cover stained and soggy. Inside were dozens of pages filled with symbols, scratched writing, and drawings of people. Our house, our faces, and dozens of dog illustrations. Some were crossed out in red. I showed my parents. That finally did it. Dad called the sheriff. The man didn't even want to go down the cellar stairs, but he eventually did. What he found made my mom scream and drop to the floor. Below the barn was a room, dug out by hand, with a mattress, dozens of animal skulls, knives, jars of blackened meat, and photographs. Some were of us. Others were of strangers. In some photos, the people were asleep in their beds. In others, they were wide awake, staring in fear. There was a small tunnel dug into the far wall. Too narrow for most people, but whoever had been living down there had used it to escape. The police never found him. We left that week. I still don't know who the man was, how long he'd been living below us, or why he left those pictures behind. But sometimes I wonder, what if the scratching had never stopped? What if I had opened the door? And worst of all, what if he's still down there, under someone else's house? July July 2021, my cousin Leo and I planned a weekend getaway deep in the Crystal Lake Forest Reserve. We invited our friends Naomi, Jason, and Bree, all of us fresh out of college and exhausted from real life kicking in. No phones, no Wi-Fi, just fresh air, pine trees, and quiet. The drive took nearly 6 hours. The last two were on dirt roads with potholes big enough to drown a raccoon. By the time we reached the trailhead, it was late afternoon. We hiked about 3 miles into the forest and found a clearing near a small stream, the lake just beyond a thin line of trees. We set up our tents, built a fire, and cooked chili. The sunset lit the trees orange and gold. It was perfect. That night, we stayed up sharing dumb stories and drinking from plastic flasks. Everything felt easy and calm, until Leo went still. He was staring past the firelight into the trees. "Did one of you just throw something?" We shook our heads. He insisted he heard movement, sticks snapping, footsteps. We all listened, but the woods had gone silent. No crickets, no owls, no wind, just stillness. Eventually, we laughed it off. Maybe a deer, maybe Leo's nerves. By midnight, we zipped up our tents and tried to sleep. I woke up sometime later to a weird sound, breathing, slow and wheezy, right outside my tent wall. At first, I thought maybe Leo or Jason had stepped out to pee, but I didn't hear any rustling or footsteps. Just that horrible breathing, labored and low, like whoever it was smoked 2 packs a day. Breath. The sound moved, from one side of the tent to the other, then silence. I didn't move until morning. At breakfast, I casually asked if anyone had gotten up in the night. Jason said no. Naomi looked disturbed. "I heard it too," she whispered. "It was circling our tent." That's when Bree spoke up. "I swear someone whispered my name," she said, looking down at her coffee. "Like, right next to the tent." We all got quiet. Jason suggested maybe someone was messing with us, another camper or a local pulling pranks. We checked around the campsite, and that's when we found them, bare footprints in the dirt. No shoes, no socks, just long, narrow toes. They circled our tents and vanished into the woods. After we saw those footprints, everything changed. We packed up camp fast and hiked a mile closer to the lake, thinking we'd feel safer near the water. We even joked about fishing, trying to make things feel normal again. But that second night was worse. We arranged our tents in a tight circle and built the fire bigger. Jason kept his pocket knife by his sleeping bag. I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. Just after 2 a.m., I woke to whispering. Not a dream, not the wind. Real voices, too soft to understand, but steady, like a chant. The fire had burned low, and the forest beyond was ink black. I unzipped the tent a crack. Someone stood just beyond the light's edge. Tall, thin, motionless. I couldn't make out their face, but I saw the silhouette clearly. No shoes, arms hanging long by their sides. They didn't move or say anything, just stood there, watching. I whispered Leo's name across the tent. He didn't respond, but whoever was standing out there turned and slowly walked into the trees. At dawn, Leo was gone. His backpack, shoes, even his sleeping bag, still in the tent. We shouted his name for hours, scoured the area, and finally decided to get help. Jason ran ahead to the ranger station we'd seen on the map, while the rest of us waited near the trail. When he came back, he was pale and shaking. "There is no station," he said. "Just a burned-out building. Looks like it's been empty for years." We left everything behind and sprinted to the car. When we finally got to town and told the local sheriff, he didn't even look surprised. He asked us where we camped. When we told him, he let out a long sigh and said, "You should have stayed away from the east side of Crystal Lake. Locals don't go there." We asked why. There were disappearances out there. 20 years ago. Same kind of thing. Campers hearing voices, people vanishing. A ranger went missing too. Only thing they ever found was a circle of bare footprints, and his belt, wrapped around a tree branch 15 feet high. We begged him to send a search team for Leo. They searched for 3 days. Nothing. No trail. No footprints. No torn fabric or signs of struggle. It's been over a year. Sometimes, I still hear whispering in my dreams. Sometimes I see shapes standing in the corner of my room just before I wake. I don't know what we saw out there, but I don't think it was human, and I don't think it was alone.